In the heart of a bustling American city, on a crisp autumn evening, Major William Bradford sat at his mahogany desk, the muted glow of a nearby lamp casting a warm halo over the myriad of maps and documents strewn before him. His mind, a whirl of thoughts and concerns, strayed to the distant lands where shadows of turmoil loomed ominously. It was 1933, a time of significant change, both at home and abroad. William, a man of duty and discipline, had served in the military since his youth. His eyes, seasoned by years of service, had witnessed both the glory and the chaos of human enterprise. Yet now, as he read the reports coming in from across the Atlantic, his heart was heavy with a new kind of unease. Germany, a nation still scarred from the last great conflict, had found a leader in Adolf Hitler, a man whose rhetoric and ambition were as incendiary as a summer storm. The evening air, cool and comforting, did little to calm the turbulent thoughts that ran through his mind. Reports spoke of rapid militarization, of an entire country galvanized under a singular, dangerous ideology. It was as if a great engine had roared to life, driven by passion and zeal. The Treaty of Versailles, meant to be a document of peace, felt more like an ominous echo now, resonating with the sounds of tanks advancing across the European psyche. William folded the reports neatly, placing them aside. His thoughts drifted back to his own experiences during the Great War, the trenches, the camaraderie amidst chaos, and the desperate yearning for peace. He had seen the cost of conflict firsthand and understood, perhaps better than most, the grueling toll it took on nations and souls alike. The rise of the Nazi regime was not just a geopolitical shift, it was the stirring of a giant that threatened the delicate balance the world so tenuously clung to. Outside his window, the city hummed with life, children playing in the streets, couples strolling arm in arm, and the distant clatter of streetcars echoing through the night. It was a world his heart longed to protect, a world seemingly untouched by the distant tides of war. Yet, as a high-ranking officer, he knew too well that the comfort of ignorance was a luxury they could no longer afford. As the clock ticked its steady pace towards midnight, William leaned back in his chair, eyes closed, and took a deep breath. The decisions he and his country would face in the coming years would shape the very essence of the world they lived in. The horizon was ablaze with potential and peril, and he felt the weight of both resting heavily on his shoulders. With a quiet resolve, Major Bradford rose from his desk, drew the curtains to a close, and allowed the comforting embrace of night to guide him to rest. Within his dreams, heroes rallied and realms trembled, the unfolding chapters of an epic tale, yet unwritten. As dawn broke over the city, painting the skyline with hues of pink and gold, Major William Bradford was already deep in thought, walking briskly to a meeting at the Pentagon. The corridors were alive with the hustle of officers and strategists, their minds honed to the difficulties ahead. The urgency in their steps matched the growing tension that had begun to ripple across continents. In Germany, Hitler's rise to Chancellor had swiftly metamorphosed into something far grander and more threatening. The Reichstag fire of 1933 had been a catalyst, enabling the consolidation of power under the guise of national emergency. Newspapers emblazoned with marching troops and striking swastikas were omnipresent, even in the distant American heartland, which seemed somehow shielded from the storm. Back in Washington, the call for strategic foresight was clear. William settled into his seat at the long oak table, surrounded by fellow military officers and advisors. Today's agenda circled around the rapid remilitarization of the Rhineland. It was March 1936, a month not long past, and the German troops had marched boldly into the demilitarized zone, a treaty breach that resonated like a drumbeat of impending conflict. William had watched the newsreels, the confident steps of Wehrmacht soldiers, and the jubilant cries of German civilians, sparking complex emotions of concern and foresight. The meeting was intense, conversations layered with the gravity of decisions that would influence global dynamics. What was Europe yet again to their tranquil lives across the ocean? This was the question echoing in the chambers. However, the magnitude of silence from France and Great Britain, their reluctance to counteract Hitler's moves, heightened the alarm within American military circles. William understood that overt ignorance could quickly devolve into necessity. After the meeting, as the officers dispersed, William found himself deep in reflection, walking the quiet paths of the Arlington Cemetery, a stone's throw from the Pentagon. Rows of white headstones stood as silent sentinels, a poignant reminder of past sacrifices. His mind wandered to the evolving geopolitical chessboard, an intricate game of strategy where every move was critical. The United States, while distant, could not afford to remain merely spectators. The aroma of spring mingled with the somberness of the surroundings, suggesting both renewal and remembrance. William felt an odd solace here, an unspoken connection to the past, guiding him as he pondered the future. The coming years would require steadfast resolve and delicate diplomacy, a balance between action and restraint. Days passed, bringing with them the steady escalation of global events. The Spanish Civil War flaring with ideologies as proxies, setting the stage for a broader confrontation between fascism and its foes. These international ripples reached American shores with stark clarity, rallying leaders like William to prepare for what felt increasingly inevitable. As evening shadows draped over the city once more, Major Bradford returned home, greeted by the warm embrace of his family. He spent the night recounting with guarded optimism the role they as individuals and as a nation might play in the shifting tableau of history. As he spoke, he resolved to bear the burden of tomorrow's conflicts with a clear-eyed vision, pacing their preparation with a dedication born of love for a peaceful future. The summer of 1939 descended upon the world with a deceptive calm, like the lingering stillness before a storm. Major William Bradford found himself once more at the epicenter of discussions that could reshape the global order. The anticipation of impending conflict hung in the air like the humidity of July, casting a heavy pall over the strategic discussions at the Pentagon. On a particularly sweltering day, William sat in a crowded war room, surrounded by maps marked with pins and strings that connected the fates of multiple nations. Across the Atlantic, tensions simmered in Poland, the heart of Europe, a concern that had grown from whispers to roars in the halls of military power. Hitler's demands for Danzig and the Polish corridor had pushed the continent to the precipice of chaos. The meeting convened to address this mounting crisis featured America's top military minds, their faces a mosaic of concern and calculation. William listened intently as intelligence reports confirmed the ominous gathering of Nazi forces along the Polish border. The question now was not if, but when. The room buzzed with the discussion of logistics and alliances. Britain and France had pledged their support to Poland, yet their recent histories of appeasement weighed heavily on all present. There was a collective understanding that the time for passive observation was drawing to a close. William contributed his insights, advocating for increased preparedness stateside. His experience and intuition recognized the strategic importance of early mobilization, even as the United States sought to uphold its neutral stance. However, neutrality did not mean inaction, and he pushed for measures to fortify domestic defenses and reconsider their alliances. As the meeting adjourned, William picked up his briefcase, the weight of responsibility nagging him heavier than its actual contents. Reports suggested that diplomatic negotiations in Europe were failing. His instincts, honed from years of strategic foresight, warned that the gears of war were locked in motion. On September 1st, William's fears solidified into grim reality as news arrived of Germany's invasion of Poland. The world watched, breath held, as Hitler's blitzkrieg tactics, a swift and brutal combination of air and ground assaults, swept across Polish territories with relentless efficiency. It was a moment that seemed to freeze time, vividly marking the onset of another great conflict. Days later, as the reverberations spread, Britain and France declared war on Germany. The lines were drawn, alliances invoked, and Europe was once again aflame. William, at home, shared the challenging news with his family. While the Atlantic still provided a buffer of safety, the psychological distance had all but vanished. In Washington, the corridors of power were transformed by frenetic activity, a new focus on fortifying the nation's military capabilities. The roots of war had taken hold, and Major Bradford found himself strategically woven into the fabric of the efforts to navigate this complex, burgeoning theater of war. With every passing day, his resolve solidified. He stood as a vigilant sentry, contemplating the broader steps America must take while balancing the immediate needs of defense. The storm had arrived, engulfing Europe completely and edging closer to his own shores, a sweeping test of endurance for freedom and humanity. As autumn leafed into winter, the chill of 1939 enveloped the globe in the harsh reality of war's return. Major William Bradford, amidst the ever-busy confines of the Pentagon, found himself inexorably drawn into the fast-developing theater of World War II, even as America cautiously maintained its stance of neutrality. Yet, the echoes of conflict vibrated through every corridor, preparing those within for the unseen tomorrow. The world expressed its surprise and admiration at the Soviet Union signing a non-aggression pact with Germany in late August, a cynical diplomacy that had given Hitler the confidence to march into Poland. As the Nazis advanced in the west, the Soviet army made its movements east of the Bug River, a consequential chess play that forced the Allies to reckon with a dramatically shifted battleground. The meeting of the minds within the Pentagon revealed a complex tapestry of new alliances and old rivalries. William listened to the strategy discussions. New alliances had to be considered and old ones re-examined. The Lend-Lease Act discussions commenced in whispers with those trusted to handle such delicate considerations, intended to aid those who directly opposed Axis expansion. It was a subtle entry into the war, facilitating arms and supplies to Britain, who bore the brunt of Nazi aggression. Inside these meeting rooms, the urgency was palpable, amplified by the knowledge of Hitler's continued aggression, such as the invasions of Denmark and Norway earlier that year. The era of sitting back was waning, and each conversation held potential implications for broader engagement. Outside those walls, in the nation's heartland, America throbbed with an industrious buzz. Factories that once produced refrigerators and cars now pivoted to churn out weapons and planes, a transformation orchestrated with quiet resolve and an eye toward eventual necessity. Major Bradford's role increasingly intertwined with these domestic efforts. His strategic insight was becoming vital in transforming American industrial might into a force fit for uncertain times ahead. In December, as peace on Earth seemed more aspirational than achievable, William attended a gathering of military leaders at Hyde Park with President Roosevelt. The chill of the Hudson Valley was countered by the warmth of shared purpose. They discussed strategic positioning, the significance of British resilience, and the potential of American intervention. Roosevelt himself regarded the map of Europe with a contemplative gaze, acutely aware that neutrality was a fragile facade over an eventual engagement. By January 1940, fires of war continued to rage across Europe, and news of Finland's valiant stand against Soviet invasion during the Winter War reached America. It served as a stark reminder of the tenacity required in the face of overwhelming odds, a sentiment that William carried back to his colleagues at the Pentagon. He knew the United States would one day need to embody a similar resolve if it was to uphold the values at the core of the national conscience. As winter yielded softly to spring, Major William Bradford's determination crystallized. He saw clearly the road that America would eventually be compelled to travel, a path carved by sacrifice and sustained by unity. And as the world turned under the shadow of conflict, he envisioned a future where liberty regrew from the seeds of perseverance, prepared to guard the light against the gathering dark. As the sun began to warm the chilly embrace of early 1940, Major William Bradford stood on the precipice of history's unrelenting current. From his vantage point in Washington, the world resembled a grand theatre, each act played out under the watching eyes of nations and fate itself. His focus, however, was riveted not on the stage itself, but on the very backdrop of the unfolding narrative, the escalating conflict in Europe. In springtime's shadow, the reality of the situation burgeoned with alarming clarity. German forces, emboldened by previous successes, now set their sights on a new horizon. The invasion of France, which had loomed like an ominous storm cloud, erupted swiftly and decisively. The Blitzkrieg, a word now deeply etched into the consciousness of global military strategy, tore through the French defences with unforgiving speed, reaching in mere days a crescendo that would carve Paris out of its resistant repose. William, entrenched in meetings, felt the enormity of the events resonate through every decision. Reports poured in thick with detail, accounts of evacuated soldiers scrambling. From the beaches of Dunkirk, their retreat a sombre victory, saved by the bravery of countless civilian sailors and a rare pause by German forces. It illuminated both the fragility and fortitude of the Allied spirit, a duality William was acutely aware of. Simultaneously, in the United States, the gears of change began to turn more fervently. President Roosevelt, with an eye on the encroaching darkness, championed the Selective Training and Service Act of 1940. This peacetime draft, the first in U.S. history, signaled a pivot from passive readiness to active preparation, an acknowledgement of the stakes laid bare by the European theatre. William watched as young men, volunteers previously, now joined the ranks through duty, their collective resolve a testament to a shifting national ethos. Amid these sweeping developments, plans were laid to bolster defensive infrastructure, and William's expertise was called upon to guide strategic placement of munitions and troops. Fortifying the homeland assumed strategic significance, with coastal defenses and aircraft production escalating to match potential threats. As factories roared to life across America's expansive landscape, producing planes and tanks that would symbolize hope and resistance, William's role became indispensable. Through the months, news of the relentless Luftwaffe attacks on Britain reverberated across the Atlantic. The Battle of Britain, led by the indomitable spirit of Prime Minister Winston Churchill and the unyielding Royal Air Force, underscored both the peril faced by the Allies and the imperative for support. It was here that the Lend-Lease Act, passed by Congress in March 1941, offered unprecedented aid, marking a shift towards more overt involvement without yet abandoning neutrality. Living through these times, Major Bradford was a man ever aware of history's progression. He experienced an intricate balance, involved and preparing, while maintaining an outward neutrality. The scope of strategic partnership grew with each policy and each legislative maneuver, directing towards an inevitable collision between global ideologies. By year's end, as autumn surrendered to yet another winter, the anticipation of harsher times lingered in the brisk air. For William, the path ahead was as clear as it was daunting, the script of warfare unfurled with tortured grace, demanding the resilience innate to every freedom-loving individual. With steady heart and strategic mind, he braced for the roles yet to be played, an unwavering sentinel of democracy, poised at the edge of destiny's stage. As the dawn of 1941 unfurled, a rhythmic pulse of urgency thrummed through the air, resonating within the halls of the Pentagon. Major William Bradford, ever vigilant, found himself increasingly tethered to the spiraling developments overseas, his strategic acumen imperative to the unfolding narrative of war. The American stance was one of poised intervention, a nation straddling the line between peace and the gathering storm. By the early months of the year, the Atlantic became a realm of peril and possibility. German U-boats prowled the depths, threatening the lifelines that the Lend-Lease Act sought to uphold between America and her beleaguered allies. William focused keenly on the reports flooding in, aware that each convoy thwarted or sunken drew the United States closer to action. Roosevelt's directive to establish naval patrols in the Atlantic exemplified this slow pivot towards engagement, setting a defensive perimeter that would inevitably lead to conflict. By this point, the Axis powers extended their grip across vast swathes of Europe, and the spectre of war loomed over nations like a persistent shadow. Italy, aligned with Nazi Germany, embraced expansionism, engaging in battles that spilled into North Africa, poised at the southern doorstep of Europe. William absorbed this information, recognizing the significance of British fortitude in Egypt and the precarious balance held in the Mediterranean theatre. Amid these pressures, Roosevelt's fireside chats imparted reassurance, their words like a lighthouse amidst turbulent seas for many Americans. William sensed a subtle shift in public sentiment as these messages nurtured understanding of the global stakes and fostered support for escalating defensive measures. Spring gave way to summer, and with it came the chilling winds of further conflict. Germany, unyielding in its ambition, launched Operation Barbarossa in June, thrusting a knife into the heart of the Soviet Union and opening a colossal eastern front. The sheer scale of this invasion, with millions of troops and tanks surging forth, was staggering. It marked a pivotal moment, engaging the Soviet Union in a visceral struggle that shifted the balance of alliances and opposition dramatically. This strategic upheaval prompted deeper contemplation of potential scenarios and responses within the United States. For William, the war's reach was rapidly tightening, the European theatre a tableau of complexity requiring careful consideration and planning. Prudence mingled with prophecy in his assessments, shaping visions of an America compelled to unite against fascism. As the year's end approached, events on the eastern horizon demanded a reckoning. Japan, emboldened and expansionist in the Pacific, posed an emerging threat that could no longer be ignored. Intelligence reports warned of their intentions, raising apprehensions over the stability of the Pacific domain. Then, on December 7th, 1941, the serene Sunday morning was shattered by the echoes of disaster. The attack on Pearl Harbor galvanized the nation as radiant Hawaiian skies were marred by smoke and fire. William, like so many others, felt the gut-wrenching jolt of war crashing through the threshold of his homeland. The sense of peaceful distance was obliterated, drawing every American into the inexorable tide of global conflict. In the aftermath, President Roosevelt's solemn words declared a state of war with Japan, and William understood that the tempo of his efforts would crescendo. The torpid cadence of prior engagement gave way to the clear, unwavering call to arms. A nation joined in resolve, casting aside neutrality and rallying under the banner of justice. Major Bradford, amidst the whirlwind of mobilization, accepted the mantle of increased responsibilities. As the nation united to transform its might into action, every heartbeat was a vow to uphold the values of liberty, a promise that William and his compatriots embraced as their guiding light amidst the enveloping darkness of World War II. As 1942 unfolded, the American landscape transformed under the weight of newfound resolve. In the wake of the attack on Pearl Harbor, Major William Bradford found himself woven into the fabric of a nation mobilizing for total war. The wheel of destiny had turned, thrusting America fully into the maelstrom of World War II. Across the country, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Factories roared to life with unrelenting vigor, converting assembly lines for automobiles into production halls for tanks, planes, and ships. Men and women joined the workforce in record numbers, their collective efforts forging the arsenal of democracy. This surge of industrial might became a lifeline for forces fighting in distant theaters. William, now deeply entrenched in military strategy sessions, scrutinized maps of the Pacific, where conflict flared with new intensity. After the shock of Pearl Harbor, the American Navy regrouped rapidly, striking a decisive blow at the Battle of Midway in June 1942. This pivotal encounter turned the tide against Japanese advancement, a victory born of courage, intelligence, and strategic ingenuity. Simultaneously, in the European theater, the Allies launched offensives to disrupt Axis strongholds. North Africa became a battleground, the site of Operation Torch, where American and British forces landed in November. It was a crucial step toward liberating the continent, and William contributed to the meticulous planning that aimed to outmaneuver German forces led by the celebrated General Erwin Rommel. The campaign marked the beginning of a long march that would one day liberate Europe from Axis occupation. Throughout these hectic months, William maintained a watchful eye on the broader scope of conflict, aware that each battle was part of a larger symphony of war. The propaganda ministry deftly orchestrated public morale, weaving narratives of unity and sacrifice while emphasizing the righteousness of their cause. It encouraged rationing, victory gardens, and war bonds, uniting civilians in shared sacrifice and purpose. On the home front, civilian life dramatically transformed. Friends and neighbors answered the call of duty, young men enlisting in droves, donning uniforms to protect the freedoms they cherished. Women, too, filled roles left vacant, their presence reshaping societal norms and forever altering the perception of gender dynamics within the workforce. Rosie the Riveter became an icon of the age, representing strength and determination as women built armaments for the battlefield. The war effort also sparked innovations and technological advancements, accelerating initiatives that would change the future landscape. Radar, cryptography, and aeronautics drew focus, their developments contributing to an evolving strategic advantage. William, privy to these advancements, understood their potential to dramatically alter the course of the conflict. As 1942 waned, the United States solidified its position in the Allied partnership, a coalition defined by shared goals and driven by necessity. Conferences held with Churchill and Stalin established key strategic objectives, reinforcing unity amid diversity of nationhood. William felt the weight of history within these alliances, aware that their challenge was not only to defeat a formidable enemy, but to lay groundwork for a post-war world imbued with greater justice and peace. Through it all, Major Bradford remained resolute, his role an intricate dance of strategy and execution. The long and arduous journey of World War II had begun in earnest, and he was determined to see it through, confident in the courage and spirit that bound together free people against the tyranny of oppression. The unfolding months promised both hardship and hope, and William stood resolute, ever vigilant, as the winds of war swept him forward on the tides of destiny. The dawn of 1943 brought with it a renewed sense of determination and a strategic shift for the Allied forces. Major William Bradford stood at the heart of this evolution, his role increasingly pivotal as the United States and its allies pressed forward in both Europe and the Pacific. The year's momentum was palpable, stirring a collective resolve to push against the Axis powers with every ounce of ingenuity and strength. In the depths of winter, the Allied forces turned their focus to the Mediterranean. Sicily, the island gateway to the Italian mainland, became the focal point of Operation Husky. Planned with precision and executed on the night of July 9, 1943, the operation marked the beginning of the Italian campaign. William was deeply involved in the orchestration of this multifaceted assault, which combined land, sea, and air forces in a bold bid to open a new front in Europe. As the landing forces pressed forth against stiff resistance, the significance of this campaign became immediately apparent. The fall of Sicily not only secured vital sea lanes, but also precipitated political upheaval within Italy. Mussolini's regime teetered and fell, his resignation and arrest signaling a crack in the Axis edifice. William, keenly aware of the implications, noted how this internal turmoil could hasten Italy's withdrawal from the conflict, diverting German forces to another failing front. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, the relentless waves of conflict reached the island of Guadalcanal. Here, the Marines had fought an arduous campaign, culminating in a hard-won victory as Japanese forces withdrew in February. This triumph marked a turning point, solidifying American control in the region and symbolizing a shift in momentum that mirrored the fight in Europe. Back home, the spirit of unity soared. The relentless demand for resources and manpower saw every corner of America contributing to the war effort. Across the heartland, victory gardens flourished, scrap drives collected metals, and communities knitted socks for soldiers. Every small act, when multiplied across millions, built bridges of support to the fighting men overseas. William observed this extraordinary mobilization with deep pride, knowing it reflected the strength of a nation united in purpose. He dedicated himself to coordinating logistics that ensured these supplies reached the global theaters, each shipment a lifeline for soldiers counting on homegrown support. As the year unfolded, the complexity of warfare expanded further with technological innovations and intelligence initiatives. The Allied codebreakers, working tirelessly, made significant inroads. The cracking of the Enigma cipher proved particularly advantageous, giving the Allies a glimpse into German communications and enabling counter-strategies that saved countless lives. Throughout 1943, Major Bradford's days were demanding, filled with the tireless push of operational momentum and the necessity for constant adjustments. Alongside these logistics, he fostered alliances, key partnerships that deepened with every shared victory and setback. The combined might of American, British, Soviet, and other Allied forces bore fruit in conferences like Tehran, where the foundations of post-war strategies were laid. By year's end, William acknowledged the towering challenges that lay ahead, yet he carried a burgeoning optimism. The Axis powers, while formidable, were increasingly on the defensive. The war's trajectory, though still uncertain, leaned toward a destiny crafted by those vehemently opposed to tyranny. Major Bradford and his compatriots glimpsed a nascent future, one sculpted from the crucible of battle and sustained by the unwavering belief in freedom and human dignity. Each victory, like a carefully placed stone, built upon the last, and as 1943 faded into history, William stood ready to fortify the enduring pathway toward ultimate victory. As 1944 dawned, the glimmer of hope on the horizon grew brighter, casting a renewed sense of purpose across the Allied forces. Major William Bradford, nestled within the strategic core of the Pentagon, felt the palpable surge of expectation rippling through corridors, both at home and abroad. The war had reached a critical juncture, demanding precision and perseverance from every man and woman engaged in the monumental effort to secure peace. This year, William turned his keen attention toward the impending push across Europe, where the plans for Operation Overlord, the ambitious invasion of Nazi-occupied Western Europe, were being honed to exacting detail. Posters emblazoned with V for Victory adorned walls, a constant reminder of what was at stake. In the early months, as preparations for the invasion reached fever pitch, the entire Allied apparatus was mobilized into action, a dance of logistics and planning unparalleled in scale and complexity. Coastal towns across England brimmed with activity, vessels lining the shores in anticipation of the largest amphibious military assault in history. William, intimately tied to these efforts, coordinated with colleagues to ensure every component, from personnel to equipment, was precisely in place. In the months leading up to D-Day, the effort to keep the intricacies of Overlord veiled in secrecy became paramount. Deception operations such as Operation Bodyguard, which included feints and misinformation campaigns, were employed to confuse the German military about the true location and timing of the invasion. William understood the pivotal role of these strategies in securing operational success, channeling resources to reinforce their efficacy. As the clock ticked toward June, the world held its breath. The night of June 5th, an intense briefing commenced, detailing the following day's assault on Normandy. William, positioned among the highest echelons of the planning team, felt the weight of history descending, enveloping the room in solemn anticipation. Every decision carried the significance of destiny. The liberation of Europe hinged upon their resolve. At dawn on June 6th, the elements aligned to redefine history. As sky and sea darkened under swarms of Allied aircraft and ships, the assault began. The beaches of Normandy, Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword were etched into history through the valor and sacrifice of those who stormed them. William, receiving real-time updates, experienced an emotional mosaic of dread and hope as radio transmissions crackled with reports of progress and peril. Back on American soil, the country rallied behind its brave sons and daughters, each heart aligned in prayer and support. Victory gardens grew ever more vibrant, and war bonds were purchased with renewed vigor. Every citizen participated in some form, bridging the distances to support the troops. As the initial assault ended, the triumph of D-Day became apparent, a monumental turning point in the war. The breach in the Atlantic Wall signaled the beginning of the end for Nazi control in Western Europe. This victory was an echo rebounding across the globe, instilling renewed belief in the possibility of ultimate victory. The summer of 1944 saw the rapid advance of Allied forces, pushing inland through the hedgerows of France and liberating towns and cities chained under tyranny for years. William, amidst the fervor of planning subsequent maneuvers, understood the significance of hastening momentum, each liberated town a step toward enduring peace. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, American forces epitomized courage in battles across Mariana Islands, solidifying naval supremacy and bringing the war closer to Japan's doorstep. The dual-front advance catalyzed the looming collapse of Axis powers on both sides of the globe. As the year edged toward its close, Major Bradford reflected on the journey from entangled uncertainty to impending victory. The spirit of cooperation and sacrifice had melded diverse nations into a powerful alliance poised to reclaim freedom. He understood that while challenges remained, the path was illuminated by the courage of millions who dared to vanquish tyranny. With steadfast resolve, William prepared to navigate the final chapters of this epoch, holding tightly to the vision of liberty for which so many had fought. With victory growing tantalizingly close, he resolved to see the task through to its rightful conclusion. The air was crisp with anticipation as 1945 unfurled its banner over a war-weary world. Major William Bradford stood at a pivotal juncture, a sentinel on duty as history rapidly approached its epochal climax. The momentum from the prior years, victories in Europe, compelled the Allies toward a determined push to bring the conflict to a conclusive end. In the opening months, the might of the Allies continued their unrelenting advance through Europe. By March, the Rhine River was in the Allies' sights, a formidable natural barrier that, once crossed, heralded the collapse of Nazi resistance in Western Germany. Operation Plunder, the meticulously planned crossing, was carried out with deft precision. William, a silent orchestrator behind the scenes, diligently ensured the logistics channeled seamlessly towards success. The Rhine bridgehead, once secured, opened pathways into the heart of Germany. Units swiftly captured cities, liberating populations long oppressed under the harrowing shadow of war. The German military's collapse hastened as Allied forces, like the widening branches of a mighty river, spread throughout the countryside, cities and towns. By April, William found himself immersed in strategic discussions through the maze-like corridors of the Pentagon. He, along with other top military minds, calculated the final pushes required in Europe. As news broke of Adolf Hitler's death by suicide on April 30th, the Axis regime's end felt imminently near. The man who had plunged the world into chaos had met his end, and celebratory murmurs swept across free lands. On May 7th, as Europe awaited word, the unthinkable became reality. Germany unconditionally surrendered at Reims, an act ratified the following day in Berlin. Victory Europe Day, May 8th, became a day etched into history, a vibrant tapestry woven from threads of courage, sacrifice, and relentless pursuit of peace. William, having trusted time and tireless effort, let out a long-held breath of relief and remembrance for those who gave all. Even as celebrations erupted in cities from London to New York, a somber awareness lingered. War endured still in the Pacific. Here, the conflict against Japan intensified. The Battle of Iwo Jima and subsequent capture of Okinawa underscored the brutal nature of this theater, each combatant's resolve fueled by profound courage and commitment. In the Pacific, the command turned towards potential strategies for ending hostilities. The invasion of Japan loomed ominously in their plans, an assault predicted to ring with devastating consequences. Yet even as these plans were formed, whispers of an alternative solution began to permeate strategic debates. The atomic bomb, a scientific revolution promising an unprecedented end to conflict. William, privy to the Manhattan Project's remarkable efforts, understood the moral gravitas of this new weapon. The enormity of its potential was as staggering as the responsibility it bore, a Pandora's box promising theoretical swift resolution amidst monumental ethical considerations. Back in Washington, an air of tentative reckoning descended upon the halls of power. This newly developed arsenal, heretofore the stuff of speculative science, demanded nuanced deliberations, its use poised upon the precipice of historical consequence. As the summer sun reached its zenith, America prepared to confront decisions that would redefine warfare and geopolitics for generations. William steeled himself, aware that the choices made would ripple far beyond military consequence, waves affecting the entirety of human resolve and morality. In the face of monumental decisions and their irreversible implications, Major Bradford remained resolute, guided by the core values that had sustained him throughout the conflict. As history unspooled before him, he stood ready to witness the conclusion of a generation-defining saga, all while harboring hope for the dawn of enduring peace. Amidst the July heat of 1945, Major William Bradford found himself profoundly engaged in the quiet but potent conversations that coursed through the nation's capital. The war in Europe, reminiscent of a terrible storm, finally abated, yet in the Pacific, conflict lingered ominously near its climax. This summer, horizons seemed poised between the end of one era and the dawn of another. In the heart of Los Alamos, New Mexico, a testament to scientific genius and ambition took shape, a realm where William's thoughts frequently wandered. Here, the Manhattan Project progressed toward its apex, laboring under the weight of expectation and ethical consideration. Scientists, led by figures such as J. Robert Oppenheimer, orchestrated the marriage of theoretical physics and raw materials, a promising orchestration that could alter the fate of nations. During this period, from the depths of New Mexico came a deafening revelation. On July 16th, in the pre-dawn darkness of the Jornada del Muerto desert, the Trinity test illuminated the landscape with a radiance akin to an artificial sunrise. As the mushroom cloud climbed, its silhouette trapped against the sky, radio transmissions delivered the news to Washington. The atomic age had begun. William, among those with clearance to be informed of the test's outcome, felt a profound mix of awe and trepidation. Here was a weapon that, through its sheer destructive capability, bore the potential to coerce surrender and staunch the surviving bleeds of war. Yet within its genesis lay the spectre of future conflicts, where power's lure overshadowed restraint. In the ensuing days, William observed the shifting dynamics within high command. As President Harry S. Truman took counsel from military and scientific authorities, contemplation turned toward the prospective use of this unprecedented power. Would its deployment hasten Japan's surrender, precluding a costly invasion? These conversations throbbed with urgency, brimming with moral complexity unimagined in prior conflicts. Meanwhile, in Potsdam, President Truman met with other Allied leaders, deliberating the future course in the Pacific. The Potsdam Declaration urged Japan to surrender unconditionally or face prompt and utter destruction, echoing across the Pacific as a looming ultimatum. As these discussions played out, the broader implications of utilizing the atomic bomb simmered in the periphery. Through these interactions, William maintained his strategic clarity. He was tasked with preparing logistics for a possible invasion, a monumental undertaking if diplomacy and new technological assertions faltered. Yet, amidst these plans, he remained acutely aware of the heightened tensions and challenges facing a world perched on the threshold of transformative power. As August approached, the weight of decision compressed into days, each passing moment a whisper of history forming under the hands of present actors. William, a silent observer in these proceedings, reconciled his own thoughts on justice and obligation. His commitment to ensuring a peace wrought from integrity and sacrifice endured, guiding him as an unseen hand in the turning of history's page. The world, caught in the throes of uncertainty, swayed between fear and hope, like leaves in a looming summer storm. For William, it was a reminder that even material victory required consistent navigation through humanity's intricate moral compass. And so, with deliberate calm, he braced for the reverberations that the coming decisions would serenade across earth and time. With the advent of August 1945, the world stood on the precipice of a momentous epoch. Major William Bradford, deeply embedded within the intricate web of decisions unfolding in Washington, prepared for the moment history balanced upon the axis of innovation, morality, and survival. The weight of unprecedented choices now defined the closing chapter of an era marred by war. On August 6th, as dawn graced the Pacific sky, a singular event bound the fates of nations and generations to come. The Enola Gay, a B-29 bomber, drifted above Hiroshima, Japan, its operational cargo primed. At 8:15 a.m., time seemed to pause as the world held its breath. The atomic bomb detonated, unleashing a force unknowable, a dawn like no other. The city, once a bustling tapestry of life, was emulsified in a blinding flash, the mushroom cloud rising in defiance against natural order. News of this occurrence surged through military channels, reaching William and his peers with a clarity as disquieting as it was profound. The war, already marked by countless sacrifices, now bore a new face, one sculpted by the power of the atom. Throughout the Pentagon, whispers of the bomb's immediate devastation mingled with the broader question of its implications. In the days following Hiroshima, the physical and psychological ramifications resonated across the globe. Within Japan, turmoil and shock reverberated through leadership ranks as the realities of this new military might become undeniable. Yet amidst the unprecedented aftermath, Japan hesitated. Unyielding factions within its military councils were reluctant to concede, weighing honor against survival. As these deliberations unfurled, a second flash seared the horizon on August 9th. Nagasaki, touched by the hand of atomic wrath, confronted the same inexorable fate as Hiroshima. For William, these events ushered in a complex cascade of emotions, a triumph interlaced with sorrow, a victory mirroring Pandora's gift. The strategy discussions he engaged in carried a renewed urgency, founded upon the realization that human ambition and frailty had converged at a harrowing crossroads. The dual detonation forced Japan to grapple with insurmountable loss and altered the calculus of power. On August 15th, following the Emperor's unprecedented radio address, Japan announced its intention to surrender. The announcement coursed over airwaves like a tide, liberating a world held hostage by tensions of the preceding years. In the days that followed, the elation of peace celebrated in the streets was tempered by the enormity of the task ahead. William, amidst the exhilaration of immediate victory, confronted the lingering shadows of war that demanded reconciliation, reconstruction, and remembrance. He recognized that peace was not merely an end, but the beginning of a profound journey toward justice and healing. As September 2nd enshrined the formal surrender aboard the USS Missouri, the ceremonial close to active hostilities, William stood resolute. He understood the onus of his generation to construct a future wherein humanity's profound capacities for creation and destruction were harnessed toward preserving peace. The atomic age had dawned, an era woven with threads of promise and peril. Major Bradford, a soldier who bore witness to humanity's darkest shadows and brightest hopes, resolved to forge ahead, upholding the ideals that sustained liberty. And so, with the world turning towards an uncertain future, William prepared to embrace the challenges ahead, determined to help shepherd the promise of an enduring peace. In the months following the cessation of conflict, new challenges arose, threading their way through the complex tapestry woven by war's end. Major William Bradford, newly immersed in peace, found himself at the precipice of reconstruction and renewal within a world primed for profound transformation. As autumn descended upon Washington, the post-war agenda spurred widespread action across political theaters. The establishment of the United Nations in October 1945 stood as a beacon of cooperative diplomacy, founded upon the ashes of warfare as nations sought unity and dialogue over division and discord. William was keenly aware of this emerging institution's potential to foster peace and stability, its precepts echoing the very tenets he and his comrades fought to uphold. Domestically, America embarked on a reconstruction path, buoyed by the broad resolve to transition from a wartime economy to one accommodating the peacetime needs of millions. In this transition, veterans returning from overseas became a focal point for national reintegration. The GI Bill of Rights played a crucial role, providing education and home loan benefits to returning servicemen, fostering opportunities that would sow the seeds of future prosperity. William, while not directly involved in legislation, supported these broader initiatives indirectly, recognizing their importance in shaping a stable post-war society. He engaged in discussions aimed at structuring efficient systems for transitioning the military-industrial complex back to civilian production without losing economic momentum. Simultaneously, Europe lay marred by devastation, entire cities reduced to rubble, a stark reminder of war's capacity for ruin. Beyond the physical damage stood a human toll, populations dislocated, lives upended, and a continent crying out for rebirth. The task of reconstruction transfixed Allied nations, demanding foresight in both humanitarian assistance and political restructuring. Pragmatic interventions such as the Marshall Plan began forming in the minds of leaders seeking to rebuild Europe economically, counteracting the despair that could lead to further extremism. William observed these geopolitical developments, aware that lasting peace required not just declarations, but tangible commitments to elevating human dignity. A pivotal aspect of this era was navigating the nascent Cold War tensions. The alliance between the United States and the Soviet Union, critical in defeating Nazi Germany, began to fray. Ideological differences sharpened, and William, like many in his position, understood that vigilance was paramount. The Iron Curtain, descending across Europe, marked the beginning of this new geopolitical struggle, with the potential to shape the dynamics of global peace or confrontation. In this transformed worldscape, William embraced his role as part of the emerging frameworks designed to prevent conflict while fostering hope. Echoes from the war lingered in his memory, yet within them he sought the lessons vital for guiding a recuperating world toward a better future. As he studied the shifting political terrain, William Bradford understood that peace, though declared, remained a living endeavor, tasked with constant nurturing. Each contribution, whether through legislation, diplomacy, or rebuilding, was elemental in weaving a harmonious world fabric. With fortitude and faith in human ingenuity, William pressed on, committed to ensuring the legacy of peace carried forward, both enduring and resilient amidst the winds of change. As the contours of a new world order took form, the winter of 1946 ushered in an era of reconstruction marked by both hope and geopolitical tension. Major William Bradford, a seasoned observer of international dynamics, found himself immersed in the challenges that lay ahead for both America and its global partners. The collective journey towards a sustainable peace and the recasting of alliances shaped his every endeavor. In the United States, the post-war period demanded significant economic restructuring. Returning veterans sought to re-establish themselves in civilian life, creating a surge in demand for housing, education, and employment. The GI Bill facilitated this transition, transforming American society by expanding access to higher education and supporting a burgeoning middle class. William saw the nation's shifts as a reflection of enduring resilience. Industries that once serviced the formidable needs of wartime production pivoted toward consumer goods, fueling a post-war economic boom. Embracing these changes, William engaged with initiatives aimed at encouraging the private sector to harness the innovation cultivated during wartime efforts, driving further technological progress and prosperity. Meanwhile, Europe lay amidst a delicate balance between recovery and ideological divide. The Marshall Plan, officially proposed in 1947, encapsulated American support for rebuilding war-ravaged economies, a beacon of hope countering desolation. Spearheaded by U.S. Secretary of State George Marshall, this unprecedented aid program aimed to stabilize Europe, fostering political and economic cohesion that stood as a bulwark against the spread of communism. Throughout these initiatives, William grasped the necessity of fostering collaboration with Western European allies. Discussions within the Pentagon frequently touched upon forming institutions to safeguard peace, such as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, envisaged to bind democratic nations in mutual defense. William understood the layer of security such alliances could yield, fortifying the democratic commitment against external pressures and the internal resurgence of totalitarianism. Yet, amidst these rebuilding efforts, tensions simmered. The post-war years heralded the onset of the Cold War, an ideological confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union. The Iron Curtain spanning Eastern Europe manifested as a physical barrier dividing opposing spheres of influence. In this tension-laden environment, espionage and propaganda became arsenals wielded deftly by both sides, shaping perceptions and policies worldwide. Within this sphere, Major Bradford's perspective resonated with the balance between vigilance and diplomacy. Efforts to confront Soviet expansionism required cunning strategies, whilst nurturing hope for dialogue amidst burgeoning adversarial relations. The Truman Doctrine, thereby articulated in 1947, established American policy to contain communism, offering military and economic aid to countries threatened by Soviet influence, an affirmation that the containment strategy would define global dynamics in the ensuing decades. Through the complexities of this geopolitical labyrinth, William maintained an unwavering commitment to fostering peace. He believed in the power of unity and the significance of collaboration. His engagement went beyond strategic implementation to address broader moral considerations, nurturing efforts aimed at international cooperation and humanitarian upliftment. As 1946 transitioned into 1947, William Bradford contemplated the steps taken and pathways ahead. Grounded in the lessons of past conflict, he carried forth the resolve to actively sculpt the scaffold of a harmonious world, upholding the faith that dialogue and understanding would prevail, tempering discord with shared vision and purpose. The spring of 1947 arrived amidst a whirlwind of political and economic realignments, both domestically and internationally. Major William Bradford, steadfast in his commitment to ensuring a lasting peace, found himself navigating the intricate currents of a world still reconciling with the profound disruptions left in the wake of World War II. Every decision he engaged in served as a building block towards stability and reconstruction in tumultuous times. In the United States, a nation transitioning from wartime production to consumer prosperity experienced growth that reshaped its landscape. This period saw an expansion of suburban development, driven by the GI Bill's housing benefits and the burgeoning automobile industry. Families moved into newly built homes, embodying the ideals of the American dream. Such shifts had reverberations beyond the personal sphere, influencing economic policy and fueling the post-war boom that characterized the era. William, though focused on international affairs, understood the interconnectedness between domestic prosperity and global security. The strength and stability of the U.S. economy were integral to projecting influence abroad, where economic aid and diplomatic initiatives worked to counteract the rise of adversarial ideologies in Europe and Asia. Across the Atlantic, the execution of the Marshall Plan gained momentum, symbolizing a significant commitment to rebuilding war-torn European nations. By extending financial aid and resources, the program aimed to rehabilitate economies, foster trade relationships, and stave off the spread of communist influence. Major Bradford, cognizant of the balancing act required, supported these efforts as key to creating a resilient global alliance. In geopolitical terms, the Cold War's icy embrace tightened. The Truman Doctrine's principles of containment initiated efforts to support Greece and Turkey, nations strategically targeted by Soviet expansionist aspirations. The U.S. Congress approved significant aid packages, establishing the U.S. as a central player on the international stage, determined to deter Soviet encroachment. William, engaged in strategic dialogues, saw these measures as pivotal in maintaining regional stability and protecting democratic interests. Meanwhile, the challenges of navigating the post-war landscape extended into Asia, where the nascent People's Republic of China emerged after bitter civil conflict. The division of Korea into Soviet and US-backed territories heightened tensions, laying the groundwork for future conflict. William recognized the significance of these developments and the necessity of a nuanced approach, balancing support and restraint in a rapidly evolving theater. On parallel fronts, science and technology advanced with unexpected velocity, partly as a legacy of wartime innovation. The seeds of what would burgeon into the space race were sown during this time as research facilities examined the potential of rocketry and nuclear capabilities. William followed these developments, understanding that technological superiority held far-reaching implications for military strategy and international prowess. Amid the flux of the 1947 landscape, Major Bradford's role as a strategist and advisor demanded focus and foresight. He believed deeply in shaping the challenges faced by embracing collaboration over conflict, a creed resonating throughout the Pentagon's corridors. As the year drew to a close, William reflected on the intertwined fates of nations and the profound impact of interconnected policies. With each step forward, the efforts made in these transformative years heralded a future sculpted from determination and hope. William remained vigilant, his dedication unwavering as he stood poised at the threshold of yet further chapters in the untold journey towards sustained global peace. As 1948 unfurled, the world found itself navigating the intricate path between reconstruction and ideological division. Major William Bradford, entrenched in the strategic corridors of power, was acutely aware of the evolving dynamics shaping this era. Each decision carried the weight of potential futures, weaving the tapestry of post-war reality. Domestically, the United States continued to ride the wave of economic prosperity. The interconnectedness of the American economy was palpable in burgeoning businesses, innovative technologies, and expanding suburban landscapes. Yet, beneath this prosperity lay undercurrents of tension, racial, political, and social issues that simmered, awaiting the catalyst for change. William observed the Harry S. Truman administration, their policies reflecting the ambitions and anxieties of a society in transition. In July, President Truman issued Executive Order 9981, desegregating the armed forces. This historic order marked a notable stride towards civil rights, an acknowledgement of the contributions of African Americans during the war, and a commitment to equality that echoed through American society. On the world stage, the tentative peace crumbled anew in Berlin. The Soviet blockade, enacted in June 1948, sought to cut off all land access to West Berlin from Allied-controlled West Germany, challenging the resolve of the Western Allies and testing the newfound unity forged in prior crises. The blockade symbolized the widening chasm between East and West in a city once a symbol of hope and reunification. In response, the Berlin airlift began, a massive logistic effort that defied Soviet ambitions by supplying the beleaguered city through aerial routes. Displaying a testament to coordination and determination, planes delivered food, fuel, and other necessities, symbolizing Allied commitment to preserving freedom amidst tyranny. William, involved in the logistical planning, recognized the airlift as a beacon of ingenuity and resolve, proof that combined effort could counter brinksmanship with bold, peaceful persistence. Meanwhile, in the nascent state of Israel, an epic narrative unfolded, statehood declared in May 1948, sparking regional conflict that drew global attention. The United States, navigating the complexities of international recognition and strategic interest, played a significant role in shaping the dialogue around this new nation amidst a tumultuous backdrop. Within Asia, the Chinese Civil War proceeded in full force, intensifying as the communist forces gained ground against the nationalists. This conflict held significant global implications, influencing U.S. foreign policy decisions and marking a pivotal point in Asia's geopolitical landscape. In the halls of the Pentagon, Major Bradford's strategic oversight was tested by these cascading developments. He approached each challenge with a steadfast commitment to safeguarding peace, aware that every victory or misstep carried implications far beyond immediate outcomes. Through each initiative, William engaged with the intricate dance of diplomacy and defense, nurturing alliances and ensuring they met challenges with resilience and resolve. As the world teetered on the brink of further division, William understood that true progress demanded more than simple accumulation of power. It required vision, collaboration, and a relentless pursuit of harmony amidst the fractious complexities of human endeavor. The close of 1948 found him reflecting on the balance between deterring aggression and fostering reconciliation. Major Bradford remained a guiding force within the stories yet to be told, an enduring advocate for peace and cooperation, ready to navigate the uncharted waters of an uncertain future. As the calendar turned to 1949, the world braced itself for a year of both hope and unease, straddling the fine line between cooperation and confrontation. Major William Bradford, a thoughtful presence among military and political strategists, found himself confronting the complexities of a divided world, yet demonstrating an unyielding commitment to peace. In the spring, a significant development crystallized with the establishment of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, in April. This military alliance, formed between the United States, Canada, and several Western European nations, was a direct response to the Soviet threat. It symbolized a formal commitment to collective defense, upholding the Western Bloc against potential aggression. William, an advocate for strategic alliances, saw NATO as a crucial step in creating a bastion of stability amid Cold War tensions, a precautionary configuration to preserve liberty and deter totalitarianism. The significance of NATO was underscored by concurrent global events. In Germany, the Berlin airlift drew to a successful conclusion in May as Soviet forces lifted the blockade following nearly a year of sustained Allied air support. The triumph underscored the potency of coordinated effort and highlighted the resilience of those committed to safeguarding freedom. For William, this end symbolized a resounding victory not only in logistics but in the ideological stand against oppression. Yet, with victory came new challenges. The Soviet Union's development of its own atomic bomb, detonated in August 1949, disrupted the perceived US monopoly on nuclear power. This watershed event threatened to escalate the arms race, spurring policymakers to explore strategies ensuring security while preventing the spectre of nuclear annihilation from overshadowing global affairs. William recognized this turning point as a transformative juncture, necessitating a balance between deterrence and diplomatic engagement. In Asia, seismic shifts transformed the political landscape as the Chinese Civil War concluded, with the Communist forces declaring victory. In October, Mao Zedong proclaimed the People's Republic of China, altering geopolitical alignments and intensifying US focus on containing communism's spread. William anticipated that America's role in Asia would pivot significantly, adapting to the changing realities and shaping foreign policies to mitigate encroachments upon democratic bastions. As these events unfolded, societal currents within the United States surged towards introspection and growth. Issues of civil rights continued to stir debate, laying the groundwork for future movements toward equality and the promise of a more inclusive society. William, ever an observer of interconnected change, saw the necessity of progressing beyond political victory into moral rectitude and justice. In the later months of 1949, amidst the euphoria and anxiety of a world reshaped, William Bradford maintained his steady course, embodying the enduring principles of diplomacy and the pursuit of peace. His engagement ensured that actions aligned with intentions, commitments transformed into tangible results, and hope realized through tenacity and conviction. The dawning of a new decade beckoned, one shaped by the lessons of history, yet unbound by its constraints. Major Bradford retained his resolve, conscience tempered by experience, mind attuned to the shifting rhythms of a world endlessly poised between progress and peril. Within his unwavering commitment to guiding the destiny before him lay the promise of enduring peace and a legacy defined by purposeful reconciliation. As 1950 unfolded, it was as if the world stood at a crossroads, the decisions of this pivotal year setting the stage for the unfolding narrative of the decades to come. Major William Bradford, with his seasoned insight and unwavering dedication, found himself once again at the helm of pivotal strategies, guiding an America that faced both emerging opportunities and profound challenges. In June, the eruption of conflict on the Korean peninsula demanded immediate attention. The invasion of South Korea by the North, backed by Soviet and Chinese interests, marked one of the first significant military conflicts of the Cold War era. The United Nations Security Council, bypassing a Soviet boycott, swiftly condemned the aggression and sanctioned a response led predominantly by US forces. For William, this moment necessitated swift coordination, galvanizing troops and resources in a commitment to restore boundary lines and defend democratic ideals. Throughout these tense months, William saw the Korean War as a practical and symbolic assertion of the Truman Doctrine. The war underscored the global stakes, challenging him and his colleagues to navigate a theater that carried with it the potential for wider escalation. Simultaneously, the domestic realm experienced significant transformations. The United States steered through the complexities of burgeoning civil rights movements and the inception of McCarthyism as fears of communism prompted introspection, often veering into witch hunts and unsubstantiated accusations. William, though removed from the direct maelstrom of these upheavals, nevertheless grasped the pressing need for balanced vigilance, ensuring security while safeguarding individual liberties enshrined in the Constitution. Meanwhile, the world's technological frontier expanded. Nuclear strategies evolved alongside advancements in computing and aerospace research, laying the groundwork for future achievements. These innovations imbued William with a deep appreciation for the power harnessed through collaboration, urging him to leverage such tools for the pursuit of peace and international stability. In the diplomatic sphere, alliances cemented through forums and treaties bolstered the U.S. strategic approach. William's engagement with these partnerships underscored his belief in the vital role of dialogue in de-escalating tensions and fostering mutual respect amidst ideological divides. By year's end, Major Bradford reflected upon a world simultaneously weary from conflict, yet infused with resolute optimism for the dawn of a new era. The decisions shaped by these months laid an intricate roadmap for peacekeepers and statesmen to follow, a guiding light amid shadows of uncertainty. As he stood at the precipice of the new decade, William remained an enduring advocate for the principles foundational to progress: peace through strength, understanding through empathy, and freedom upheld by the unwavering commitment to justice. His journey was one of continuity and change, an eternal ally within a world always in transition. With steadfast resolve, Major Bradford embodied the spirit of an era defined by both its triumphs and challenges, an architect of visions looking boldly towards the horizon. His legacy, etched in the heart of a grateful nation, served as a beacon for future generations tasked with shaping the destiny that lay ahead, a future nurtured by bravery, resilience, and a ceaseless pursuit of harmonious coexistence.